All right, so this is take two because last time we tried. First of all, I'm going to go to the video and to the stream and check if I can hear. Right. So yes, I think I posted the link in the recording channel. If you guys can check too if you want. You guys. Right. Let's check that first. I'm pretty sure it should work this time.
I just heard.
Okay. All right. I can hear myself. Two, I can hear myself. Because last time. Let's see if I can hear.
Can you hear us?
That's the thing. Because last time as well, I could. My audio got recorded, but here. Okay, let's see. I think.
So it's working at least.
First of all, I'm going to check. Okay. Yeah, it's taking a while to load for some reason. All right. So this is take two because last time we tried. First of all, I'm going to go to the video and to the stream and check if I can hear. Right. So yes, I think I posted the link in the recording channel. If you guys can check too if you want. You guys. Still can't hear you guys.
It's like we're having.
That first.
No?
I'm pretty sure it should work.
Should we start again? I just heard.
No, I think it's working. Yeah. It's just that it's just mostly me speaking, so I have to wait until.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I can hear myself too. I can hear myself. But, let's see if I can hear.
Can you hear us?
That's the thing. Because last time as well, I could. My audio got recorded, but right. I can hear. Eric,
Perfect.
I think it should work.
Yes.
Could you check as well, just in case that?
I've done it, and I hear you.
And can you hear Chiasmo?
Perfect.
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Nah.
We are the both, like the two of us.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, let's start playing. So basically, what we're going to do is that because this is the second time we're trying to record this. In the meantime, since the last recording, we wrote an essay, so that we wouldn't forget what we said last time. So we're going to go through the essay that we wrote, and I guess pause it sometimes if there's anything which comes to mind. Hopefully something will come to mind. Okay, so let's start playing the video.
Ango Sakaguchi through Dairakuron, a thesis on decadence, his most famous essay about decadence in post-war Japan. No, that would be a lie. I actually came across Ango Sakaguchi through anime.
Yeah, so as I will explain later on, I came across Ango Sakaguchi through. There's an anime called Ango, which is spelled UNGO, but it's pronounced as Ango. And we already did a stream on the Rakuron, a thesis on decadence, which is basically. Yeah. Do we need to explain what it is again?
Well, very simply, it's him trying to explain why from this devastation something better could come about for Japanese culture if the Japanese people fully embrace the devastation itself.
Yeah.
which seems to be a theme that this author really likes to touch upon, and I find it fascinating. It's something that I can agree in a sense. I see meaning, and value in what he's saying. It's just that it seems to be approached from a different point of view, so to say. In this case, seems to be a little bit too, I wouldn't say materialistic, but it seems to be lacking a deep spiritual connection with something above.
Yeah, yeah.
Seems like his vantage is not one of a spiritual, metaphysical, transcendent value, but it's more something like we can get rid of the, in a sense, we can get rid of the past and try to build something better. It's more like let's scrub everything away and start from a tabula rasa.
Pretty much. Like, yeah. Let's see what.
We were saying that it's also a little bit of a cope in certain parts.
Anime.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's 50-50. There is a little bit also of that because, of course, talking to a defeated nation, you cannot be completely ignorant of the fact that people will try to cope with the pain also in different ways compared to just let's rebuild from nothingness,
Correct.
which was already attempted in other countries, the futurists, for example, or the Dadaist movements to a degree.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, it seems that like the web page stopped working. Yeah, it's not going well for us today as well. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
We'll try.
Okay, let's try reloading it. I think
Ouch.
I'll close the other web browser. What else can I close? I guess I can close Steam. I can't close Discord.
Yeah, say no.
Okay, it's reloading.
Maybe let's talk a little bit about Sakaguchi himself in the meantime. A little bit of the background. Sakaguchi was born Eigo Sakaguchi, and later on he changed his name in Ango Sakaguchi. His name was changed from meaning the brilliant, luminous one to Ango, which means at peace with himself. A teacher insulted him, called him in Ang, but it was spelled differently. And in that case, Ango meant unclear to or with himself. So he sort of took this personal attack and turned it into his own name by rephrasing it, which I find kind of interesting. It's something that many authors like to do. Like, it reminds me, in modern times, Daft Punks, they took that name because it was an insult that was hurled at them. They say, let's roll with this. Or even Tristan Tzara, the creator of the Dadaist movement, took that title a little bit because the sound of it was kind of with these assonance, Tristan Tzara. So it's kind of interesting that even this author took a similar approach, making fun of himself and redeeming his own name.
Yeah. Apparently, he was a truant as well for a lot in his school days, and he would go by the beach side, and just wait there. And apparently, there's a monument, a large stone, set there for him. Because of that, apparently. Where he used to go when he was a truant. And I think I believe that under his school desk he wrote something like he was going to be the world's biggest delinquent and come back or something like that. Yeah, I think the web page is working now. So let's see.
Excellent.
Oof.
In Tokutai Enai Sasagu, an offering to the Kamikaze, Ango invokes a cliché from the war years, referring to kamikaze pilots who scattered valiantly like blossoms in defense of the nation. Ango proceeds to offer his own expression: "Let us seek out the true blossoms of the war, quietly adorn our rooms with them, and in the light of tomorrow, bring to flower blossoms more beautiful still."
So this wasn't just Ango. I think it was a common thing to refer to the kamikaze as cherry blossoms, essentially.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
very. I think in even some of the wars, it's like they refer to their sacrifice, in general, to the sacrifice of the soldiers
Yes.
with this image of the cherry blossoms.
They wanted to like show the nobility of those who gave their lives for others of
Yeah, like the beauty of
Trial.
self-sacrifice.
Yes.
Where instead this seems to be saying exactly the
Still.
opposite. Let's not burn these
Yeah.
flowers. Let's bring them home.
Still. Under the Cherry Blossoms was published after the Second World War, in 1947. If you ignore this, then all that is left is a beautiful and yet gruesome fable fairytale with only a surface-level meaning.
So if you click the hyperlink here, it will take you to the moesucks.com article.
Yeah, we were discussing. I remember that it was kind of a, I wouldn't say shallow take on the story, but for sure they were trying to insert their own meanings where probably there was no room for those, and try to either cancel or forget the context of the story and of the world in which Sakaguchi wrote this short fairy tale.
Yeah, I don't think that ignoring the context really like can lead to like a deeper meaning or something like that, because that was basically what the author was arguing, that like it doesn't really matter what Ango meant by the story, so we can just ignore everything else about him. What matters is only the text. And like there are,
if you insert you got the death of the author, in this case was an homicide. Literally, it's rid of it, throw the corpse out.
right. Okay, so let's play this.
Meaning. Ango's personal experience gave birth to this work. During the war, beneath the cherry blossoms in Uyeno, Ango saw people being burned to death in the bombing of Tokyo. He recorded what he felt in his essays. This is what happened when the dead were brought to the Uyeno mountain and burned. Just then, the cherry blossoms were in full bloom, a forest without people. Only the wind whipped through. The frozen silence made you want to run away. From the Aoi Bungaku EP 5 to 6 introductions.
Yeah, so this is from the introduction to episode 5 and 6 of the Aoi Bungaku series, which is an anime series, and episode 5 and 6 adapt this short story. And they don't do a good. Yeah. They don't really do a good job of it, but I did like this little bit from the introduction.
It was a different take for sure. No, but I remember trying to watch the anime and being like, it clashed with the atmosphere of the original short story. Like I mentioned the last time, the intro captured the vibe quite well. It was just a few shots of the trees in full bloom, and then it was that panning shot from the cherry blossoms to the ground, and you would hear a scream. It was one of the merchants running away from the bandits, and there was a skull half vanishing in the shower of the petals. And that intro was like, boy, if everything else is taken with this space, with these juxtapositions, etc., this would be a great adaptation. And in not even 30 seconds, all these expectations, all these hopes were destroyed, I think.
Yeah. So
because the introduction to the episodes was really well done, I think. The narrator was good, the camera work was good.
It would have been better if it was just just the introduction all the way through, just him talking about Ango for 20 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever. Yeah. So apparently, so obviously he saw people being cremated on Ueno Mountain after they were killed in the bombings. And apparently, so if you go on the Wikipedia article for Hanami, which we will talk about next paragraph, like one of the things which they do mention there is the festivities for Hanami on Ueno Mountain, which means I don't know. I thought that it was relevant, I guess. Anyway, so that's why I included it there.
Introductions. This experience clashed with the traditional image of the Hanami Festival, the yearly cherry blossom viewing event where, as the narrator in the opening passages notes, the cherry trees bloom, people feel light-hearted and happy, and wander around under them, drinking sake, eating cakes, exclaiming how beautiful, what a glorious spring. The narrator then asserts that actually, if you took all those people away from there, you would feel a dreadful atmosphere.
So
it's interesting to see like how his own experience shaped his view, which makes sense. We connect certain images with other images. The human brain is really good at creating links and connections, even where maybe there are. Sometimes we create unnecessary ones, or even create triggers that where something should be happy instead causes us to feel depressed. Like triggers different emotions.
yeah,
I think in this case for Sakaguchi he saw these events during the war, and after the war he was unable to detach those past emotions from the events of the present, and that were going to happen every single year. Was like, how can you not see them as me? Maybe he did it also on purpose to emphasize them, like he wanted to show his own personal like this kind of fear he had, and he uses these strong tones mostly to provoke an emotion rather than being his real emotion. After all, part of writing a story can also be to exaggerate some of these details, just to reinforce an image. Sorry, Eric, you were saying?
I mean, if I think that that's a little bit more lag than usual today. Anyway, if I don't know, like, I didn't feel like I mean, if I didn't know about this, if basically I hadn't watched that little clip, which I've linked here, then I wouldn't have really known that there was any connection to the war, because there's no mention of the war really there in the story anywhere.
Yes, if it's read by itself, it becomes a little bit like it's a little bit jarring almost. Seeing such a visceral reaction to people going to a summer, pretty much a spring festival, and this guy being like all brutally in the corner, "Oh, could you do something like? How can you enjoy this, you monster?"
It sounds almost edgy. Like,
Yes.
No, exactly. And maybe he did it on purpose. Like I was thinking, maybe he wanted to do so to shock the reader a little bit and make him ponder on what they do without even thinking. Which again, with Sakaguchi seems to be one of the possibilities.
so we talk at length about here in the essay. We talk at length about this introduction, this opening, but it's pretty short, right? I think it's like one paragraph.
Yeah.
Or so, and then that it's just setting up the mood for the real story, I guess. But
Yeah, it's like an old narrator lifting a little bit and then into the real story.
Yeah, and it's not very. I didn't feel like it was like it was very story-like. Like you could imagine like the rest of it just going on, and it's just an essay rather than a story.
And instead, he has this way, like suddenly it switches into the framework of a folk story, of a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So there's like a change of gear, literally a change of gears,
Atmosphere.
and almost even the frame of the car has been changed.
Right. Yeah. This is what happens. You know, if I click it twice, it stops working. Okay. Let me reload it again. Yeah. So basically, during so yeah, during that few paragraph, I think we are just explaining what Hanami is, which is you know, basically flower viewing, but not really. It's just because Hana can be translated either as flower or
grass.
Or grass. I didn't know that. But here,
like, the kanji. Sorry, go first.
No, you go first.
No, because the kanji for Ana is pretty much a compound of grass and something that changes. That's why it's flower. It's like grass that changes because usually flowers sprout from the grass.
Right. But here when they're talking about Hana, they're just talking about cherry blossoms, which is weird because I think they already have another word for that, sakura, right?
Sakura is the cherry tree.
Oh, is it just the cherry tree?
Also in the yes.
Yes.
Even if it's usually the kanji shows like should be also meaning like it's both for the tree itself and for the flowers or the cherry blossoms. But then to be more specific, they say Ana just to say the flower rather than the tree.
I see. Is it going to start? Come on.
He also dwells on the sense of dizziness, maddening.
That's not where I wanted it to start.
Put simply, Hanami in Japan is a widespread excuse for having outdoor parties in spring beneath the sakura during daytime or at night. Hanami became famous during the Edo period, 1603 to 1868 AD, due to the celebrations of cherry blossoms by emperors, empresses, and the higher castes of Japan spreading to the rest of Japanese society.
I mean, even though Hanami is so popular, I don't usually see it that much in anime. Like I've seen or at least I can't remember. I can't remember seeing it being featured.
I think there are a few anime where they show it's like a festival where people dress in the more traditional clothes and go out. But there are quite a few festivals in Japan, so
Yeah. So
I also have to wonder how they translate it, how they translate the name of the festival,
yeah,
because you never know. Maybe they just call it the Spring Festival in English, and then
yeah, and then you don't know
lose
that.
the meaning
Yeah.
of it. Exactly.
So, but basically, if you see a bunch of characters having a picnic outside, and there's sakura or what, cherry blossoms out there, that's basically hanami. So one example which I can think of is in Dragon Ball, I think, or at least I saw a clip where like. I don't need to go into the details. I can remember that, and I can also remember in You Are Under Arrest, which is sort of slice of life police. I mean, it's not a serious like police story, but yeah, that's all I can remember, and I can still hear the echo, but there's nothing I can do about it.
It's probably my set. I'll try and fix it in the meantime.
Okay, so yeah.
The narrator's visceral reaction against the supposedly misplaced gaiety at this festival is portrayed with vivid, and almost livid, bitterness, but also very briefly, as this is all just a setup to give way for a story about a mountain bandit. The opening also dwells on the sense of dizziness, maddening lostness one will feel when walking underneath the cherry trees as they are in full bloom, their petals silently falling to the ground, leading one to lose their mind. My immediate thought at this was, come on Ango, you must be pulling my leg, how bad can it be? After all, they are only flower petals.
Yeah, so yeah, I basically added that later on, but because that's what I thought. Like, really, flower petals? That's Kiasmo.
It's part of the view.
You're very quiet.
Let me try change one setting.
Okay, I have to go. I hope you continue.
Oh,
All right. See you, Captain Eric.
see you, Eric.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better now. It's much
Can you
better.
hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, I just changed one setting. No, but this is also why I find it kind of interesting, because there are things that this is the nature of phobias, isn't it? Something that may be completely innocuous. So someone else may cause them to fall into a panic, and it's something that you cannot truly explain. And I think in this case, it's interesting once you understand the background, to understand why Sakaguchi felt this way and why he pretty much took what were old stories and reworked it with his own fear, his own sense of like feeling lost when under those flowers, under those trees.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not obvious, like obvious why you would feel that way.
And I think he took his own fear and turned it into a story to sort of explain it to us.
Yes. Supposedly what he felt back then when he saw people being cremated in silence,
exactly.
rather than people celebrating, I guess. I mean, that's kind of close to people, turning into flower petals, if you think about it.
Something that we don't truly understand. Like, I never did it, so when I did it, it's kind of strange.
To shore up support for his view, the narrator claims that this danger of cherry petals was evoked in previous Japanese folklore like in a no play. It sounded to me like the narrator was implying that people started to hold festivities under the cherry blossoms together to forget how scary it would be to be there alone. It is debatable whether any of this is true, as even as far back as in the Noro period, 710 to 794 AD, there were reports of people going to see the cherry blossoms as a leisure activity. This story is fiction more rooted in Ango's experience during the Second World War rather than anything rooted in the distant past. The story is flavored in folklore, but the opening isn't folklore-like.
I don't know. I guess it seemed a bit odd that some kind of a folklore like story would start by referring to
Exactly.
another.
The thing is, if you try to make the opening sound like someone recording something, but it seemed more like the opening for a polemic piece about why this activity is foolish or why it was so wrong to celebrating during the wartime. It would have fitted better. It would fit better in such a situation. Would have felt more in place as the opening for a short essay on why he felt this way and why such behavior was foolish or something like this or counterproductive, which same time gives a peculiar charm. This fact that you seem to be heading towards a sort of manifesto on why anime is wicked in such times, and instead it turns into a story about a bandit and the cherry trees and a beautiful woman and so on, and the bizarre, gruesome end.
Yeah, it's full of surprises. You can say that. Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot blame him for adhering to stereotypes too much.
So let's play this.
Coming from a Buddhist and Shinto country, and having had contact with the teaching of both, Sakaguchi studied the former in school as a student. Sakaguchi would have been well aware of the symbolic affinity between the beauty and caducous state of the cherry blossoms and of human life, which flares up and then is vanquished so suddenly and silently. So perhaps this attack is another attempt of a literary rogue to jolt, rouse, and revive the spirit of his people, like he did with his thesis on decadence, which predates Under the Cherry Blossoms.
So about him studying Buddhism, yeah, I mean, I think that well, at least from what I've read from the book called Literary Mischief, which is a book about Ango, which is why that's what the hyperlink here on Literary Rogue leads to. There, one of the things that they said was that like when Ango at that time, most students, they were not going to study Buddhism, but rather like they were studying Marxism or whatever. So that was strange. But then after the war started, and I guess there was a renewed interest towards, I guess, Buddhism and Shinto and whatnot. It sounds like almost like, like now that everyone is interested in this, now I'm going to I'm
Yeah,
going to go the
it's
other.
again him being a little bit of a contrarian,
Yeah.
trying to go against the grain, which again, judging the character and how he writes would fit him, even if it makes it sound sometimes a little bit like I don't know, a bit annoying to listen to.
I
But it
get,
has a unique charm to it.
yeah. I guess it's almost like he believes in a bit of everything, but like in nothing in particular.
Which again is something that, what I understood of Japanese culture, is not completely uncommon. I remember reading like it's a saying, almost more like a joke, saying a Japanese is born Shinto, he marries a Christian, and he's buried a Buddhist. Like saying he tries a little bit of the Japanese person tries a little bit of everything and never settles on anything in particular.
Yeah. So basically, like you pick whatever like is most likely to give you a better outcome.
And I don't think they do it out of opportunism either. I think it's more like it's ingrained in their mentality. Some authors like the Catholic Japanese writer Shushaku Endo says that it's a little bit a form of opportunism, but not done consciously. Most of the times, it's more like it's the nature of the Japanese people to be flexible in this way. And you can see a little bit this also how after World War II they took many of the outside aspects and systems of European countries when it came to industries, etc., but they kept their own unique nature. They just took what was most advantageous in a sense to them. Again, without any real interest other than do what's best for the country as a whole, rebuilding it, turn it into a economical powerhouse, etc. But it's sort of their nature to try and get on with what's best at the time.
Not to dwell too deeply, I guess.
Yeah, in a sense, they keep a core, a central like nugget of what they are. That's why many of their old traditions are still alive. But everything else, it's easily changeable.
Right. So let's play this.
Or interchangeable even.
Blossoms.
Oh yeah, and Darakuron came out before Cherry Blossoms.
Yes, I think it
Choice by
was
the
2
author to
years
be a
before.
contrarian about.
Yeah, 2 years you said, right? Yeah. Okay, let's play this.
About Hanami, be it done consciously or not, is the strong point and the weakness of this opening. By being so vehemently against the grain, by opposing this common usance, he both makes himself unique and yet dates himself at the same time. Such is the nature of any attempt to criticize a customary public event which survives its critics. Then again, as long as cherry blossoms remain popular in Japan, this story will remain relevant. Adding to this, the rest of the short story has to do with the tones, opaque lessons, and bitter ironic tones of the fairy tale, of the folk narrative, of the tale of Olden, which has both clear and cryptic messages, which speaks on different levels and has a sort of simplicity in which our mind can find solace and fill in the blanks with our own memories. The mountains of Japan are just sketched enough for us, no matter the nationality, to see them in their most refined details, showing the masterfulness of such simple words linked in the most meaningful of ways. And here is where Sakaguchi's talent shines the brightest, and one can forgive that oddly violent outburst at the beginning where he had lounged in such harsh tones against his own nation as it partook and still partakes in this celebration of spring, which indeed can then turn into an excuse to share a meal, a few songs and a glass too much of sake underneath the trees, with all the consequences that such behaviors can lead to if not controlled by moderation. From there, the narration moves to the typical form and even the tropes of a folktale, with unnamed characters with strong signifiers: the bandit, the beautiful wife, the crippled servant, the people of the city, and the cherry trees themselves. A bit of Dairakuron decadence.
Yeah, I think
the story came out in 1947, after the war, and after
And
Ango's
never mind,
publication of
just
Dairakuron,
let it play.
Japan had lost its empire,
Okay.
and the emperor had been humbled into a position of a purely human ruler, as he gave up the titles which gave him a divinity status.
Yeah, let me.
I think you need to scroll down.
Sakaguchi.
Sorry?
No, I was saying it was time to scroll down.
Yeah, it scrolls by itself, if I scroll
okay, sorry,
yeah,
my bad.
yeah, that's why I wait until it goes to the very bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I could do something so that all the text is together, because I kind of feel like it's every time that a paragraph starts, there's so much.
Yeah, it waits a little bit.
Too much. Give me a second. Maybe I can figure out how to do that. A second. Okay. But I mean, this stream is already a mess anyway, so so that's all right. Might as well get it fixed for the rest. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I think we spent quite a bit of time on the intro, but maybe it was necessary.
I think it's because it was so strange to see such an intro next to what is a story that can feel with this intro that instead is clearly set in a time and a place once you understand Sakaguchi.
Right. Okay. I mean, it's still a pretty. But then again, we also explained what.
It's an unlucky one.
Okay.
It's been like a streak of either bad luck or bad streams.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it reconnected. Hopefully it's recording. Okay.
The story came out in 1947, after the war, and after Ango's publication of Dairakuron, Japan had lost its empire, and the emperor had been humbled into a position of a purely human ruler, as he gave up the titles which gave him a divinity status. This concept can be seen in the short story too, as the story ends in tragedy, and at the moment when, even if it...
What's going on?
Where did it go?
What's going on?
Yeah, it doesn't look like that worked.
Oh my gosh.
Why does it want to go back to the start?
It's really weird, yeah.
At this point, maybe it would have been faster if I had read it.
Sakaguchi attempts to once more cause a sort of shock with the intro and themes of the story, going against whatever is still a certainty in the fabric of Japanese society, in this case the hanami, the cherry trees viewing, and by this dislocation he hopes to cause a sort of rebirth of the nation. He expressed many times in his essays and non-fiction how he believed that one of the ways to truly value life is to be the closest as possible to complete defeat, loss and destruction of oneself. Speaking of the real worth of fairy tales, he declares, the chilling beauty of this kind of tale is due to the feeling of helplessness it conveys, because the loneliness of life is so complete that only when we realize its helplessness, darkness, and cruelty can we begin to have hope.
And that was from the Rakuron, I think.
This concept can be seen
I
in the
don't
short
remember.
story.
I think it was from it's another essay, A Cradle of Literature, where he says that this is called a cradle of literature because it's the birthplace of both meaning and the meaning of literature. This sense of hopelessness.
Oh, is this from the intro, or did you get it from somewhere else?
It wasn't it was in the intro of the short story.
Ah, I see. Yeah. We really did milk that intro for all that it was worth for this essay.
It was honestly, it was really rich, really interesting full of information about the author and his views. So
yeah, because
that's why I like.
That's not the only translation available online. Like I've seen another one, which is just a short story, which I think makes it worse. I think the intro did help, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Story 2, as the story ends in tragedy, and at the moment when, even if in a strange way, and not due to justice or divine punishment, the cruel duo of the bandit and his new wife ends up dead. Almost as impartially as an American bomb falling on a Japanese city.
Maybe that was a bit too on the nose, but I added it there.
Oh, okay. Well, this is the kind of that kind of beauty of and bitter irony of these stories. Like sometimes the bad persons are punished, but it's not because there is justice. It's just because the world is crueler than them, and there is something supernatural about it that destroys them. Many fairy tales, especially the old ones, they are not that positive. Like many of them end with just a tragic death or an ironic death or someone making a fool of him or herself.
Yeah, and also like it's not like the characters, get what they deserve because they're bad or something. It's like maybe it's more like because they're stupid or they were fooled.
Yes, it's more like their pride. They are punished more by their own pride or their own arrogance.
Or
in this case, it's because
in this case,
it's the arrogance. In this case,
mm-hmm.
The bandit is like, I don't care. I'm gonna go under the cherry trees because I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Well,
we see how that turned out.
It was wiser when he was afraid of them. It seems.
Adaptations.
Okay, is it going to? Okay, yes.
This little short story was popular enough to get a 2-episode anime adaptation and a 1 hour and 34 minutes film adaptation. The anime wastes its 2 episodes, whereas the movie runs out of content from the source material and so has some filler in the last arc. The TLDR of it is that the anime is a farce because it barely captures the mood of the story, but the film is worth watching though it runs out of material to adapt and creates its own arc subplot which you may or may not like. Neither the film nor the anime capture the violence of the short story adequately.
Yeah.
The anime.
One thing, for example, one thing I felt was missing was the atmosphere was missing in both of them, but at least like the movie made up a little bit with decent cinematography and very good actors. Whereas the anime, no, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
Yeah, I think for a lot of the stories that the anime was adapting, I kind of feel like they didn't maybe it had to be like to do with like the time slot that they got. but it wasn't violent enough, so it kind of came off a bit. Yeah.
I would have been interesting to see a more gritty adaptation because the anime could have allowed for that.
Yeah.
Again, if it weren't gritty enough, it could have been something like, which is something that I think Tarantino is good at capturing when the violence it's so abundant that it becomes grotesque as and almost laughable.
Mm.
It could have worked in such a story. But
Yeah.
they should have taken certain elements in a more somber way where they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, in the film, at least you can't say that. Well, they couldn't do it because of technical limitations. So, but I imagine that even there, they probably had to make sure that.
They could have, yeah.
Yeah. But in the anime, like I don't know, like the heads were
There
literally.
is sort of no excuse.
Yeah, exactly. There's sort of no excuse. So
Because with animation, your creativity is the limit. Well, the budget and your creativity.
yeah, and
this one seemed to be. I think there was a decent budget behind the anime because animation, from what I saw, was good.
I don't know. It seemed
The art style was good.
Yeah, I mean, it was all right. Yeah,
Not saying great, but good.
Yeah, especially for the time it came out, in the early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next section about the anime adaptation is mostly by Fahrenheit. I didn't feel like there was much for me to add other than what he had said. So let's have a look what he had to say.
Anime adaptation.
Oof.
Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit.
Yeah,
it's a long paragraph.
It has to like take a long breath in before.
Episodes 5 and 6 of Aoi Bongaku, a short series of anime adaptations based on famous Japanese literature, are dedicated to this story. Most of the story remains intact here, though additions and key character changes were inserted. At the beginning, when we are introduced to the Bandit, for example, the adaptation adds a scene in which he decides to rob an old man. In response to this, the old man goes Super Saiyan in an attempt to defend himself but ultimately fails to do so and is killed by the Bandit. This was not a terrible attempt at humor.
I think it was.
He was not killed.
I think it was just stripped. It was just stripped of his belongings. Was left only.
Yeah, I think
the thong, and that's it.
Yeah, I think I'll have to correct that. Yeah, because he was not killed.
No, just that one. Yeah, exactly.
It was only the husband was killed. The husband and the guard.
I
or
agree.
whatever.
Yeah. I agree with this sentence that it was not terrible as an attempt at humor, but indicative of the rest of
the adaptation. Yeah. So last time during the last stream, I said it kind of felt like all the characters were in that. This was fiction. That like they were like.
It felt more like the exaggerated tones of a play.
Yeah, like they were all
everything is.
Yeah, like
I'll go first.
And sorry, I mean like it felt like they were all like actors in a play, and they were all in that. This was just a story or whatever.
And almost trying to outplay one another.
Right, and there's also like weird musical sequences where like they're kind of, I think, partly reading some of the words from the story, but
the original novel.
Yeah. Okay.
Humor, but It is indicative of the
Is it going to crash? Yeah, I'll probably basically just reset my PC for the net stream. Otherwise, it's impossible. Delete everything. Okay. It is possible that the animation studio wanted to edit the story so that it was more light-hearted, yeah, and so more accessible to young audiences. I think that's probably what happened, because I think
Probably for TV, yes.
there
are censorship rules.
Yeah, the goal of the series was basically to look at these young people, like these stories which you think that are boring, like they're actually not boring.
We shall ruin it for you at the
same time. Yeah, at the same.
Now I'm being too harsh.
Yeah.
That was kind of mean on my part.
Okay.
No, but I think Fahrenheit is big up a good point here.
Well,
that they sacrificed the tone to try and broaden the appeal of it, but it didn't pan out.
Yeah, I mean, it's good in the sense that, like, if you actually know that the stories are good, like if you accidentally think, okay, this was shit, but I'm going to have a look at the original story and it's actually good, then that will make you want to check out the source material for the rest as well, because they might actually be good.
I don't know. Sounds like counterproductive way to handle such material. Of course, I understand when you adapt something, you need to change it a little bit for the format. Sometimes adaptations work better in certain areas when compared to the book, because being a visual media, they can express certain things better, but at the same time they got limitations, so they will need to work around this. You cannot show, it's difficult to show the thoughts of the characters, for example, in a way that it's not too obnoxious or intrusive.
If you want to see something truly horrible, have a look at the adaptation for Kokoro. That was really
bad. Yeah, I remember you were mystified.
Okay, let's play this.
Light-hearted and so more accessible to younger audiences, but what was sacrificed was much of the tone and meaning of the original text. What they did get right was the ending, when the woman takes the shape of a monster, causing the bandit to panic, throw her off his back and then strangle her to death. For this scene, the anime Whistler decided to closely follow the description given in the story, though, as said before, the entire adaptation could have been more faithful. The choice to change the crippled woman for a young girl was overall a negative one. Her only purpose was to help inject some humor into the anime. We see a couple of scenes with her and the boar, for example, but ironically turning the bandit's crippled wife into a little girl implies something much darker.
It didn't occur to me until you mentioned it. Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of weird. Exactly. What is this guy doing? This is one of her wives. Call the police.
The amount of
never mind the robbery
depicted in the story was also played down too, with the heads looking more like dolls' heads than the description of rotting flesh we get in the original, as well as all the deaths such as those of the woman's husband and the bandits' wives being kept off screen or largely toned down. Again, it does not hurt the tone of the story too much. The bandit still seems like a believable character and the woman is still monstrous, but the point here is to point out that the characters shown in the anime haven't been made blunt. The character design for the bandit could be
Yeah,
better
that's
as he
very
came across as more of a wrestler than a hunter, but the design for the woman was quite good. It captured the frigid, cruel, and refined beauty of the woman. The rest of the designs were innocuous with the exception of one of the bandit's wives being American. The final key point is how the characters were given.
Yeah, there was a gag about like one of the wives being American for some reason. Yeah, I mean,
I think it was. I'm not. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. But since Sakaguchi wrote so often about the American occupation in some of his pieces, and
I don't
like
think
next
it's
week we're
that
gonna
deep.
talk about the internet. Yeah, no, that's what I say. Probably I'm reading too much into this,
Yeah,
but since one of the fears of Sakaguchi, like as he expresses them in some of his characters, seems to be of the Americans occupying Japan and the worry of the people about this and what they could do to the women. I think, and again, this is just me reading this. This is kind of the opposite, like a Japanese bandit taking away a woman from the American
yeah. I mean,
payback time
I
in the
don't know.
past
I guess.
somehow. But again, this is just me chuckling at the idea of this
Yeah,
possibility.
I mean, like when the bandit goes to the city and like he falls down, like the city people, like the medieval Japanese city people, take out their flip phones and take photos of him and laugh at him, and it's that's the gag, I guess.
Yeah, the whimsical, bit too whimsical side of it.
Yeah.
Given too much character. The original story, written like a simple fable, gave each of the side characters passing descriptions or just merely acknowledged their relationship to the bandit, whereas here the thoughts and emotions of the characters are expressed explicitly. This can be seen most clearly with the bandits' other wives, where the way they interact with one another wouldn't be far off from what you see in a stage production. How each of the wives are feeling at any moment is clearly televised. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't be a drawback. However, in this instance, a more impersonal or ambiguous tone like that found in traditional fairy tales would have been the most desirable and the most consistent with the original text. To conclude this section, the anime adaptation should not be considered as vital viewing or even as a way to better understand the text. One upside for the existence of this adaptation is the fact that it is included in a larger anthology series, Aoi Bungaku. Not only has this broadcast presumably brought more attention to the short story itself, but also more eyes to other stories and authors too. 1. The film
Good
adaptation.
point.
Yeah. So the other stories here, I think the Kokoro by
Yeah, I
Natsume
think you
Sosei.
linked them
Yeah, I think then. Yeah.
and a couple by Akutagawa.
Yeah.
I think one by Akutagawa, I read it. I don't remember which one.
Was it
Sure, one of the two.
Was it the one about the spider web, and like
No,
the
the
sinner?
other one.
The other one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I
The
haven't.
Spider Web is one that I want to read. Honestly, I heard it's good.
Adaptation.
I think this part was mostly by you. I think.
I think I wrote a good chunk. Yeah.
The 1975 film adaptation had an extra subplot about reformed criminals being recruited as a police force. Later on, it's shown they too are corrupted and still a bunch of robbers, even if now under an appointed officer of the city. The adaptation gets, due to these scenes, both too grounded, but also too surreal due to the bandit becoming a villain with a title, The Beheader. Due to these added elements, it loses part of the folk tale charm and vibe the original short story has. The actors and actresses portray the characters well, giving them a lot of personality in their mannerisms, movements, and expressions. The camera work is relatively simple, but well executed and effective in portraying the story and the time-lapse. The costume and city design give out a quite authentic feeling, which work in favor of immersing the viewer in the story and setting. The main weakness of this adaptation lies in the fake heads used to display the voracious and morbid passion of the woman the bandit took as his new wife. She keeps them as gruesome dolls to play and interweave stories with, but while in the short story their human factor is kept well intact by the graphic description of their rotting away and festering with maggots and finally turning into white skulls, the ones used for the movie are too clearly made of wax, and it weakens the horror factor of this cycle in which the bandit finds himself, having to gather heads as if it were but a job like another, a daily routine. Some of the shots with the crippled servant among the skulls, however, add an artistic flair and even flavor to some of the scenes and events in the city. As previously noted, the casting was on point.
Probably I should have noted that it's like I mentioned above, I could have said more or less the same as Fahrenheit said. The characters feel more grounded by the way that they are portrayed by the actors, and that weakens a little bit again the fairy tale, the folk tale side. But at the same time, it wasn't bad. I didn't think it weakened the story in itself. It just gave it a different tone that I can accept for a movie adaptation. Because unless you go fully surrealist with, I don't know, either producing a set with fake trees and fake city walls and stuff like this to give this fairy tale vibe, but it would cheapen at the same time the atmosphere of the real forest. So it was a necessary compromise, so to say, to adapt it into a movie.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard. If you have seen the movie adaptations of The Great Gatsby, I've also heard something similar said about them. That the newer one, in some ways, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio is better in some ways because of how weird and over the top it is. Whereas the original,
yeah, it's that Austrian. Is the Austrian director? Is the guy who directed also Romeo plus Juliet again with with DiCaprio and Moulin Rouge. That director, despite its flaws, I think it's really good at giving that sort of fantastic tone to many of his stories. It's really good at blending realism and fable-like tone with this over-the-top cinematography and scenography and backgrounds, which is not very common in Hollywood. So only for even if you don't like his movies, for example, I'm not the biggest fan of his movies. I admire his stylistic choices because, for example, for a movie like this, it would be great. I think he would be able to retain both the narrative and the fairy tale elements of the story.
right? Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know, even if it's the same events, it feels a lot more commonplace. I don't know when
I think the movie adaptation has a more carnal feeling. There is a sense of raw energy that is different from that of the short story, even a sort of eroticism to it. Erotism. For example, the scenes between the bandit and the new wife, there is way more. I'm not saying that it's too graphic, but you can feel that there is.
Yeah, I think that
the fire of passion between.
I would say that was a necessary addition, because in the short story, because it wasn't mentioned. It seemed almost like the bandit wasn't even touching the woman a little bit.
Exactly, but this is part of the fairy tale narrative, that there are these characters that are pretty much not allowed to do. There is an imposition from above. You can do this. It's one of those recurring themes, no? Like different characters have things that they cannot do, and if they do it, they'll be punished. This again harkens back to mythology,
and I mean,
where certain characters cannot do certain actions, otherwise they will lose their loved one, or they will be punished by the gods.
I mean more in the sense of like if this woman doesn't even allow him to touch her, why does he do? Why does she just do what she says? I was wondering a little bit about that.
Well, again, it's part of the, I think, of the fairy tale tone. That this character, it's so. His love is a different kind of love than the love of a real person. Even his lust is not the lust of a real person.
Right.
Whereas in the movie, it's a person of flesh and blood. In the story, it's more of an archetype.
Yeah.
It represents all bandits. To say, it represents that side of humanity. It represents that side of our nature.
Okay, so let's hit the play button and hope that it will work.
And when I think of the characters now, what comes to mind are those in the film. If you have any doubts about what the characters or the mountain or the city looked like, the movie is worth a watch. Due to the limitations of special effects, the killing and gruesome scenes don't look real. Crucially, if you hadn't read the short story, you might not get that the characters turn into cherry petals at the end, because the characters just disappear.
Did you also notice this?
Yeah. That was exactly, they just vanish, whereas in the story it's clearly stated that they turn into petals. That's how they disappear, in a sense. They just become
petals. Yeah.
Another petal shower on the ground.
Yeah,
One of the things I have to say, there is one killing that it's rather gruesome, both in the setting and in the execution. It's the death of the ugly priest, who was the male companion, the young male companion. It's the only time that you see blood splattering the face of the bandit, and that one felt kind of, let's say, satisfying when it comes to the gruesome factor. When he jumps from the ceiling and decapitates both with one clean swing of the sword.
Yeah, I think
and blood
showers
his face.
I think the time when like he's was this I'm not sure. I don't think this was there in the story, but I'm sure that it was there in the anime and the film, where like the bandit is dressed as a woman and then killed someone. That was a bit silly, I thought. Or was that not there?
I don't remember him dressing as a woman in the movie. In the movie, there is that guy who pretends to be another official to have his way with the princess.
I see. Must have been from the anime then. Yeah.
And he dresses up as one of the servants, I think, but it's to infiltrate the castle.
Yeah, and you're like, is the bandit going to save the woman? No, he's going to kill both of them. We know, because we have read the story.
Whatever. Part of the job.
Yeah.
Teleports behind you, nothing personal. So.
Yeah.
Disappear. Characters. Bandit. He represents the savage side of humanity. He does not seem to enjoy killing, and does so more out of necessity, simply to steal what he wants, rather than sadism. He is certainly more savage than noble, and he wouldn't appear innocent if he were robbing you, but in his animalistic simple-mindedness he comes across as less macabre than his counterpart's refined evil. He will kill you, but he won't stay around to play with your corpse. He boasts a lot about his strength and physical prowess, but his will and mind are weak. He finds himself being easily manipulated by the woman, entranced by her refined beauty and her demands. He wishes to confront his, to be fair, well-founded, fear of the cherry blossoms, but he keeps postponing, even keeping his fear of them as the only thing he hides from the beautiful woman he took to his mountains.
Okay. Well, I guess in
Dramatic pause.
Once in the city, he finds himself.
Okay. Yeah. It doesn't look like it's working. Yeah. Anyway, like one of the things which I did wonder of was whether like if the woman was really a demon or a monster to begin with, whether she actually cared.
Yeah.
Whether she wanted to go back.
It seems to be seen exactly because there is this underlying cruelty. She doesn't seem to care much that her husband is murdered in front of her. She seems to be caring only about her own looks and appearance. And this man, this bandit, is willing to go all lengths to do whatever he can to please her, killing people and bringing their heads back to her even when she's finally able to convince him to move to the city.
Right, and like whether she actually wanted him to go back to the cherry blossoms or not. I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, maybe she was really a monster, and she was able to lure him under the cherry blossom. She was going to really kill him and then return to the city. Part of the beauty of the story is this: that a lot of things are left unclear, and there is this sense of gloom, this sense of something is about to happen. It's always behind, around the corner, ready to jump on the reader.
Yeah,
We are hyping this story behind belief at this point, but I find it's really interesting how it's written and how the characters talk and interact with one another and what they may represent or what they may be in this kind of archetype form.
right. I mean, looking back at it, it was kind of obvious that like when they suddenly seemed happy a little bit, that it was going to go to hell.
Yeah, it's like, of course, it cannot end well.
Okay. Once in the city, okay. I'll just read until this thing works or not. So, once in the city, he finds himself unable to be happy, like a caged animal forced into a loop of violence to please the greedy, selfish, and morbid desire of the woman he took in as his new wife. In an ironic twist, he ends up seeing the cruelty and ugliness of the woman when under the cherry trees. So it's like the cherry trees revealed her true nature or something.
Yes, his madness shows the real. And I think I was trying to connect here with the kind of irony that of this justice that not comes about because of some real revelation or divine intervention, but because he goes completely mad and he sees her as a witch in the shape of an ogre with a horrible grin. He throws her off her back and strangles her And only then he regains his consciousness and realizes that he strangled this woman, and he panics. And at that moment is when the cherry petals attack, and it's when he's turned into cherry petals himself.
So the bandit's whole existence is one of violence, punctuated by death. It's how and why he has to resolve them to survive the changes in the mountains. He's a robber and a murderer out of necessity. While I mean, is he really out of necessity? Does he really need to be?
It seems like he kills very seldomly in the mountains and only when he has to. From the description, it seems like he prefers to just scare people and make them run away. But every once in a while, he strikes to kill.
In the city, he
So
has
again,
to
it's
do
more
so
of a
to please his
necessity.
trophy.
Yeah. So while in the city, he does so to please his trophy wife. I guess she's a trophy wife. I didn't. Okay. Yeah, and then he kills.
In this case, for real, because he captured her.
Yeah.
Even if he became the captive in the end.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Yeah, that he was the one who seemed to be like a captive.
Again, one of those ironic twists of fate. It was the strongest, most powerful creature in the mountains, and he's come to this frail yet venomous creature that coiled around him. And he realized that of this coiling around his neck only when going completely insane under the cherry trees.
But then again, like if they had not gone under the cherry trees, then maybe everything would have been all right.
We would have gone back to the usual killing and bringing head.
Yeah.
In the future.
Okay. And then
he kills one last time due to the cherry blossoms he always wanted to face but never had the courage to. And it's this one act of pride which leads to the death of the woman and himself.
Why is it I guess it is an act of pride because, like, he thought that, like...
Yeah, because it's like, I don't care anymore at this point. I'm strong.
Yeah.
The cherry blossoms with my wife, Bandit. Look what he did to her.
The beautiful wife.
Okay, so the beautiful wife could represent refined but hollow civilized humanity. All she does is try to fulfill her selfish desires. Okay. Her
beautiful wife could represent refined but hollow civilized humanity. All she does is try to fulfill her selfish desires, her petty fantasies, and even dies due to her scheming, even if it is out of her control and more due to the same weakness which allowed her to control the bandit.
Is it due to the same weakness?
In this one, was because she's so frail, she cannot fight back. She schemes, she plots, she's finally able to, like, convince him, yeah, let's go back to the mountain. But she already scheming, like, I'll bring you back to the city. And because she has no strength, when the bandit throws her off and strangles her, she cannot defend herself. In this case, it was just brute force rather than any mental trick that at the upper end.
I can't remember whether in the short story as well she thought that she would be able to come back to the city. Wasn't that just in the movie?
Of the story and in the
I see.
Of the story in the movie, she talks to the crippled ex-wife, the servant, and he's like, keep the house ready, I'll be back in a few days, like saying, don't worry, I'll be able to drag him out of the mountains and come back here.
So she could also represent the devastating side of materialistic society, which can indeed cobble together. Okay.
Bandit. She could also represent the devastating side of a materialistic society, which can indeed cobble together beauty from apparently disjointed elements, but has a voraciousness for all things onto which it can lay its hands, regardless of the costs or effects onto others. Her indifference towards the death of his husband, and her desire to control the bandit makes her into a real monster, but she keeps getting away with all this due to her beauty, able to tame and control even a brutal man like the bandit, almost closer to one of the beasts he claims to be stronger than. The crippled ex-wife.
Okay, so that's... Okay,
The-
it stopped.
Sole survivor of the
okay, it's
massacre
fine.
which the beautiful wife causes at the hand of the bandit, claiming you killed my husband, now you must kill your wives, and she seems to be spared because, being a cripple, she could be easily manipulated and controlled by the new head of the household. She seems to enjoy the city, even if in a shallow way. The most passive of characters, and the one who seems to survive more due to her weakness turning her into an item, something in the background which cannot cause harm or rouse any emotions. She could represent, in a way, the defectiveness of passivity, of accepting things without any thought about them.
Yeah, but at the same time,
This one,
yeah, I mean,
go.
at the same time, like it's because of like passivity, because she just accepts everything that, like, when she goes to the city, she seems to be the one who seems to be you know, kind of sane.
More at ease.
Yeah, more at ease. Exactly.
But I think there is like a negative connotation to it. And I think here maybe Sakaguchi was trying to criticize his own people. I don't know if he did it so directly or indirectly and consciously, like saying you accept the situation no matter what. And that's why you are crippled. But again, that could be just me reading too much into it. But knowing the type of writer Sakaguchi seems to be, it could be a way, like a key, to read such a character.
Yeah, 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 and you know, it's like when you think back about it, like it makes sense that I mean, obviously, it's very cruel, but it makes sense what the wife, the beautiful woman did, beautiful wife or whatever did, when she asked the bandit, you know, to kill all the other women, because obviously they were going to hate her if she left them alive, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She realizes that this one is even too weak to wait, pretty much.
Yeah.
To bear grudges.
Them. Symbolism bingo.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a list of. So I just called it that. Yeah.
Cherry
Mm-hmm.
petals, obviously humanity, fleetingness of life. Under the cherry blossoms the chaos, hopelessness, and lack of control over our fate is revealed. The heads, decapitated victims of the bandit, playthings of the beautiful wife, they may represent how people's lives are often toyed with by those who can and wish to assert power over them. The woman plays matchmaker and storyteller with them, making up convoluted stories of love, betrayal, suicide attempts, and commitment. The bird in the sky, the woman's desire is limitless, there is no end to it, like the forests on the mountains, and then, as a sort of mirror to it, the freedom the bandit enjoyed. It is the only image conjured up by the protagonist in the city as his thinking to flee the place and the woman he took for himself.
Yeah, I think it goes into some more detail, like, because he basically says that there are two different kinds of birds or something, right?
Mm-hmm. There is a little bit. It's the only moment where the bandit has a moment of introspection. He tries to have moments of introspections, like he keeps, in a sort of way, he gives up on them, I think, because it's so constricted by his own way of life until that moment, that he can allow himself not to think too much. But then once in the city and with the increasing demands of the woman, he is like considering running away, and then for a moment he's really free to think. And then when he has this inner monologue about the bird and the difference between the woman and himself.
Did it stop working again? Yeah.
Himself.
Okay, seems like it's...
The woman's treasured ornamental combs, hair ribbons, lipsticks, and such things. The woman treasured ornamental combs and hair ribbons and lipsticks and such things, and it made her angry to see the bandit touch them with his dirty hands. She gave orders for the house to be cleaned and furniture arranged in it. She even made the bandit make a chair and armrest for her. What she wore was not one piece of cloth and a belt. She used many pieces and many strips. She added ornaments, until the whole was unified and perfected. He was mesmerized by how a piece of beauty could be formed out of meaningless fragments being put together, and how once disassembled, they are again meaningless fragments. This he understood as a kind of superb magic. Style.
So it's a very good passage in the book.
Yeah.
It felt like talking about art, or if not art, at least how humanity can put things together and give a deeper value to them, and when they are separate elements. And this is both something that can be used for beauty or for like manipulation, which is what the woman seems to be doing mostly.
It seemed to me like that it was talking about civilization in general, because like it's about this. This was like the place where he was talking about how he was he was kind of afraid of the city. This is before he moved there.
It was something. That when he starts to wonder about the city, and when he's lured by the woman to go to the city.
Like it's something beautiful, but you can also deconstruct it back into nothing, essentially. Okay, let's.
There is a treacherous side to it.
Ango versus Mishima. The story doesn't linger on events, even violent ones like murder, for too long, and lets the story itself deliver the message rather than using long and detailed sentences examining the character's psychology. The vocabulary used is also rather simple. If the translator is to be believed, then this was the case in the original Japanese too. Compared to Mishima, Ango's style is rather fast-paced and allows one's imagination to fill many of the blanks, and works effectively to setting a stage for the story and characters without burdening them with too many details, while also subtly showing us their mental and moral profiles.
Did you also feel that was the case with, I guess, next week's topic with the idiot?
So part of it I wrote it, so I think that's the case. The translator made sure to note that he tried to keep it as simple as possible to respect pretty much Sakaguchi's original writing. And I think there is truth to it, that what is given to us is just what is necessary to understand, and everything else, it's up to us to deduce from the hints he gave us here and there. Maybe there is also a little bit of like playfulness. Doesn't say enough, so maybe we can ourselves create our own stories within the story of why certain things happen that way.
Yeah, I think
this last part, I think it's a little bit of speculation on my part. So.
Yeah, I think probably by this
Profiles.
point. Yeah.
With Mishima, it is undeniable that the words are chosen for their elegance and beauty, and they weave together a gorgeous tapestry of images. However, the clutter and heaviness of each individual word often tires and makes one lose track of the story if not read carefully, and this is something with which Sakaguchi seemed to have issues. While he did respect the effort on Mishima's style to revolt against the current trends and norms of both literature and society by reverting to archaic and seldomly used characters for his stories about rebels and outsiders within the Japanese strata of pre-WWII Japan.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I've read. Okay, yeah, it's working again, thankfully. So where did we stop? Yeah, the bit about the ending.
We just finished the bit about Mishima.
I see.
Have you read a few works by him and seen how Sakaguchi confronted him in the preface, in some of the things that were quoted about the new style, and saying how the post-war Japanese felt to him as alien, as Persian? I think I can understand why he sort of respected Mishima, even if he disagreed with how to tackle the challenges of modernity. In a way, it reminds me a little bit like the different approaches to social rebellion in the United States. For example, what's the name of that title of that movie with John Travolta? Saturday Night Fever. That one was an attempt of rebellion that was going on at that time. It was like, we shall bring the rebellion to the dance floor and live this kind of dissoluted, uncaring life, whereas at the same time you had people protesting in the streets or taking over universities to try and change the curricula inside of them. So I think in this case, it's the same kind of approach, different forms of rebellion against the same core issues that these authors saw in their society.
Ending, From Dust to Petals. It's a supernatural ending. Until they turn into cherry petals, the story plays with the idea that everything could have been naturalistically explained. You could ask some silly questions like, if there wasn't anyone else around who could have seen them turning into cherry petals at the end, then who wrote the story? But let's not do that. During the ending, the beautiful wife takes the shape of a monster, her skin turns purple and her mouth stretches from ear to ear. It is unclear if the cherry blossoms send the bandit insane or reveal to him the true nature of the woman, but either way, the bandit experiences a moment of deep sorrow for killing her and then relief and liberation. The message, Ango versus Dazai. The message and intended effect of this story, taking into account Sakaguchi's other writings such as Darukuron, is to make humanity stronger by first leading it to hopelessness, not by leading it to suicide like Osamu Dazai. According to Ango Sakaguchi, Dazai was a big puss who chose suicide. Dazai could have at least done it in a based way like Mishima, but I imagine Dazai would have trouble finding so many fit and youthful boys for his cause. Dazai preferred to find fit and youthful women for his suicide attempts rather than boys anyways.
It had to pause there. Okay.
Dramatic pause once again.
Yeah.
The difference is made clear in Sakaguchi's essay on Dazai, Christ and Juvenile Delinquents, in which he writes, Dazai called himself a comedian, but the fact is he never made it. In the setting Sun he is close to it, but not quite. Father, cherries, oh, those are the things he should never have shown to the public. They should have existed only in his hungover mind, and should have been forgotten as soon as his hangover was gone. The pains and sorrows of self-reproach and reminiscence which one suffers with a hangover should not be treated seriously in a literary work, or, for that matter, in life.
I mean, given the things that Sakaguchi writes, I wonder how bad.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I don't know, this one felt a little bit like he took a job at the guy just because they were saying, hey, you sound a lot like this guy. No, I'm not.
Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting, but I do not agree with him.
Life.
Yeah, so the next sentence...
Both Akutagawa and Dazai committed
Yeah,
suicide as juvenile delinquents. They were the weeping, whimpering kind, weak. They couldn't win with physical power, nor with intellectual power. Therefore they had to show themselves off under some authority. Both brought in Christ. What's so great in death or suicide? Those who are defeated die. If they win they won't die. Victory at death? Nonsense. For man to live is all. When you die you are no more. Fame after death? Art is long. Nonsense. I hate ghosts. I hate those ghosts that live, they say, after they die.
This is sort of a ghost story, though, I guess.
This one again, I don't fully agree. I agree with him that they tried to turn their suicide in a sort of last testament to their ideas, both Akutagawa and Dazai. But this part sounds a little bit Epicurean, like the only thing that matters is life itself, and the joys of it, in a sense, and nothing else really matters. Which is close to something true, but it goes too far in the all that matters is the pleasures of life.
yeah.
Even it doesn't strike me as Sakaguchi being someone who only wanted the good parts of life and trying to erase the bad ones. There is a little bit of this approach in this analysis when it comes to Dazai and Kutagawa, which I disagree.
Like, he can't imagine victory in that, somehow.
I disagree there. Plus, it's sort of vague. I'm not entirely sure what it does not. I mean, it means like suicide. Then yes, I agree that suicide is a defeat. But death itself is not a defeat if it's taken in the right way. Certain men could find redemption even in death if they die for some ideal. Maybe it's the wrong idea, but at least they are giving their life for something greater themselves.
Because I mean, I remember in the Rakuron he was talking about like those old military politicians who decided not to kill themselves.
And now they were, and instead of that nephew of his that committed suicide. Kind of morbid thing to touch upon, but it was kind of interesting, how he made a distinction between those deaths, those officials that did not embrace death, and those who instead decided to die to preserve some part, be it the innocence, the purity, or some higher value, rather than having it soiled by a life of betrayal of those higher aspirations.
But yeah,
So in that regards, it's a little bit
yeah, but yeah,
going in the other direction.
you're right though. It doesn't sound like he makes a distinction between suicide and death. It's the same for him. It's almost.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed like it was more of an opinion thrown, more of a personal attack almost towards Dazai Nakutagawa.
So okay, let's see. He goes on to say Dazayana. Okay, it's going to read it. It doesn't look like it's going to read it. So Dazai and Akutagawa were writers of whose work Sakaguchi read in the past and had further. I think we already discussed. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much that he went against them.
It became
because he got disappointed. You know, when you admire someone and all of a sudden they do or say something that you disagree, and in a way they become your personal enemy for some reason because you were so attached to them.
Yeah.
Which we can see even with internet personalities nowadays.
Okay. So I guess all that is left is the personal considerations section. Do you want to read that too?
Up to you.
Okay, let's go ahead then.
I'm gonna say my name with an English pronunciation of it, I imagine.
Let's see. Chiasmo.
Yeah. Chia seeds.
Chiasmo. The jarring intro does not weaken what is, in essence, a great folk story about the nature of man and of his fears, about the vices of men and women, and about what could be a liminal experience, here represented by the cherry blossoms themselves. The story has both the Gothic...
What did you mean by a liminal experience?
Something close to the limits, like between what is real and what's unreal, the real spirit world, the natural and the preternatural.
Story's psychological angle, which reminded me of Hoffman's The Sandman, and the eerie nature of the original versions. Of popular short stories like Red Riding Hood, with their strange mixture of violence, almost humorous bitterness and gruesome endings. Sakaguchi does not soften the blows, and shows the violence and depravity of the characters, while the light writing style conveys both elegance and a sort of simplicity which allows the reader's mind to put his own colors and images to fill what is left vague on purpose. How much of the message and how many of the symbols and ideas perspiring in the story are the results of the reader's own views and experiences? How much of the concept of the death of the author which comes from Sartre's writings can be used here to imply or justify certain readings of the story? I cannot fully tell, but I think Sakaguchi, being a skilled and witty narrator, did indeed play a bit with such concept, even if understood and expressed in other terms at his times and in his culture.
The emphasis and his quote-unquote culture, seemed like.
Yeah. Doesn't look like it's... come on. It can't read.
Culture.
Okay.
Fahrenheit, Under the Cherry Blossoms in Full Bloom is a short story that I appreciate and have gladly given a high score, but I personally got very little out of the story. The story was written to be a short fable or something akin to a fairy tale. If this will become a great artifact of that time or even eventually a well-known tale is out of my hands, but what I can say is that it contains deep messages and is interesting even without a deeper reading. Ango has the capacity to create very detailed scenes using only simple words, this making his style superior to that of other authors such as Mishima is a conclusion I would disagree with, but it is certainly not controversial to say that it is perfect for telling the story. I first listened to the story's audiobook instead of reading it. I caution that if you are listening to the story, it is very easy to miss out on key details in the story. I missed the fact that the bandit killed his wives, for example. Captain Eric.
Okay, well...
The
Is it... No.
shows how fragile the human condition is. We can see that within the main male protagonist. The bandit, even though he was physically strong, was a fragile and easy to manipulate mind, probably because of his savagery and his inexperience with the civilized world. The woman depicts human materialism and emptiness. From the start, we know that her husband was a rich man and that she is a beautiful woman. She can get all she wants, but she still follows that urge of filling her selfish and sadistic empty hole that is, in my opinion, generated by the boredom of a material lifestyle, even though the story doesn't insist on this topic. This also shows how fragile the human condition is, because it depicts how humans can't get enough pleasure and that, eventually, everything will become boring or unfulfilling. The ending shows exactly the same weak condition. We can see how the bandit was manipulated all along, and how it ended up, which proves that he was a weak and easy to manipulate savage. The same thing with the woman, she couldn't manipulate him anymore, the manipulation also this being the same thing that drove the bandit insane and led to the death of the woman, but she didn't realize that until it was too late because of her vanity. Taking TGS, the text-to-speech audiobook for this story is just shy of 45 minutes, so definitely give it a read if anything we have said piques your interest. There's a couple of translations of Under the Cherry Blossoms available online, but this one.
Why did it stop? Okay.
It's weird, yeah, pauses randomly.
Yeah, I thought that maybe like if I put it all in one huge chunk of
Probably it's
text.
because there are a lot of words.
Yeah.
As a nice introduction too. Some of the stuff in this article, like the quote from Ango's essay about Dazai, were lifted from that introduction. This is the part where I talk about my personal experience with this work. You know, the sort of thing that is better left unsaid and that YouTube anime reviewers often put up front despite the fact that nobody cares. I came across this story about 6 or 7 years ago when I was going through a phase where I used to idolize long stories with many deep characters and plots where everything made sense and where there was character development. Naturally, I was not impressed by this short story, and in general I regarded short stories as inferior as they could not tell the kind of grand and detailed stories and character studies that I wanted to see.
Come on. Just finish it.
Folk tales and fables were even lower than short stories for me because the characters seemed like empty-headed puppets moved to make heavy-handed allegories rather than characters who were alive and grew. I was struggling to justify why I liked what I liked, and so I latched my tastes onto some vague notion of realism, wherein anything which was more like real life, more lifelike, was taken to be better. At some point I realized that if I truly believed in that, then I might as well forego fiction and art altogether and point the lens of my eyes at reality. Since then my standards have become less strict. I like what I like and I worry about why later. As for the author Ango himself, I came across him through the...
Oh, it's in italics, so it takes longer to read.
Yeah.
Um,
The struggle is real. Well, maybe if you want, you can finish and just read it yourself.
Ango
No.
you know,
anime TV series, which in turn turned me towards Darukuron, which made me stumble upon Under the Cherry Blossoms. At the time it didn't make sense to me why the materialist who wrote Darukuron would be writing a story with supernatural events. Ango is a detective series, true with a supernatural truth serum, but otherwise pretty grounded. This goes to show how flexible of a writer Ango is. Apparently he wrote straightforward farces too. It is unfortunate that writers these days just write one type of fiction and then die, and if they are essayists then they don't even try writing fiction lest they be subject to the same criticism that they dole out. For example, a fantasy writer will remain in his fantasy box and not write a murder mystery, and if he did dare do so his audience probably wouldn't buy it. Didn't something like that happen to the author of Harry Potter?
okay, I think, you know...
No wonder they all become stale, making more of whatever worked for them once. On the other hand, I guess you could say they are simply perfecting their craft by focusing on a genre, and I am just being blinded by a romantic notion of a writer. If and when I am ever in Japan participating in Hanami, I'll be thinking of this story, or I'll be too inebriated to do that.
So, yeah.
This last consideration was rather interesting, how some authors just hyper-focus on one genre and never touch anything else, or even don't dare to go outside fiction. However, there are quite a few exceptions. There are a few writers who are both good authors and essayists. For example, Lovecraft, Tolkien, Lewis, and there are quite a few. Only,
I mean,
I'm saying recently, maybe, yes.
not that very recently.
Well, recent times.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember the name. There is another Christian author. I don't remember his name. I think he's English or American, who writes both stories and essays on culture and society. But I see what you mean. They are not very common. It's like the fabled unicorn nowadays literature landscape. Someone who's able to both create varied fiction and also dabs in non-fiction, right?
Yeah. So I mean, the reason why I talked a little bit about that is because in the book, Literary Mischief, they talk about how, like, or at least they theorize about why Ango is not as popular as some other Japanese authors, is because, like, he wasn't just a novelist or just an essayist. He was a bit of everything. So that people
He
just
didn't create a
yeah
didn't create a niche for himself and didn't focus enough
but
for people to say, "Oh, I can just grab one of his other books and it's going to be this."
yeah. So basically, like, he wrote fast as he wrote detective stories. And he became popular for a while just because of an essay. So, like, people just refer to him vaguely as a writer, I guess, rather than a novelist, essayist, or whatever. Yeah, that's
I
about
can
it.
see that being a problem.
Yeah, so basically, I think we basically milked this short story for as much as much content as we could, and although it's
Yeah, in Kirby is like a
yeah.
sorry first.
No, you go on.
I was just saying that for being such a short story, I think this is a strong point because it's vague enough that allows one to seek beyond what is shown. And seems like Sakaguchi played with this a little bit.
Yeah. So this stream was sort of a mess, but I think the article, the essay came out well.
Yeah.
I think we lost a little bit of steam. After we started talking about the adaptations a bit, it kind of became like, let's talk about anything, which is fine. I
It's
guess.
also because after you talk about the story, everything else, it's more left to how you perceive these characters. So after that became more of a speculative writing, what may be behind it.
Yeah.
Which is fine, I think.
For example, the
It
section.
was a little bit of investigation.
Yeah. For example, the section about Ango. About Mishima and Dazai kind of came out of nowhere. But just because.
Well, I think they were roused by the translation you showed us. That's very interesting. And I say that's one of the best versions that people can read because of that introduction. Gives context.
Yeah.
Explain some of the stylistic choices behind Sakaguchi's fairy tales.
Yeah.
So contextualizes a lot more.
Yeah, I guess it's fine as long as you know who Dazai and Mishima.
Yeah.
People probably know who Mishima is, at least, I imagine.
And we already read like a few of the books by Dazai, so we can plug in.
We can plug in.
If you didn't check the previous streams, you can have a look. We go a bit deeper.
Yeah,
in this.
The streams on.
I wouldn't say it's more materialistic. Actually, I wouldn't say that Dazai is purely materialistic. He has a lot of questions about human nature, which at least shows a desire to explore what makes us human and what makes us feel certain ways. And he talks quite a lot about religion in his own ways.
Yeah. I guess materialistic is not the right word for it. Yeah.
No, exactly.
It's more like quotidian, almost. I don't know.
Yes, it deals with the harsh reality of everyday life.
Yeah, and it's like he doesn't like idealism of any kind.
Yeah, he seems to be fed up with any attempt to create a society or find the answer to all the questions. So
yeah, but at the same time,
he seems more sympathetic to some approaches than others. And here I think it was the influence of Akutagawa on Dazai's writing, because both of them seems to be interested in the question of Christianity.
Do you mean on Ango's writing or Dazai's?
No, I'm talking about Dazai in this case. Sakaguchi doesn't seem to care much about, like, he seems to see the spiritual answers in religion sort of like a way to deal with the pangs of life, from what little I saw in his writings. Seems a little bit disillusioned with it.
Yeah.
Not completely removed, but a little bit like, I don't know if it's gonna...
Right. Okay then. Yeah, I think that's probably enough. How long did we talk?